a lectern here so that I could hide my oxygen tank. Well, I got interested in the book of Job quite a few years ago. We went to I was raised Lutheran, and we went every Sunday to Sunday school in the church. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know how far to be from this. And actually, it was worse than that. We first went to Sunday school and then had to stay for church. And one of the things I noticed over about a 10-year period of doing this every Sunday was that nobody ever gave a sermon on either the Song of Solomon or the book of Job. And reading the Song of Solomon, I figured out why they wouldn't talk about that to a bunch of farmers. But the book of Job was more of a puzzle, because surely there's a lot you can say about it, having to do with faith and putting up with bad things, you know, when bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people, and all those puzzlements. So I recently reread the book and found it was even more puzzling than I thought. It starts out on the very first sentence. Most of the Old Testament is about the Jews' adventures as God's chosen people, but Job lives in the land of Uz, which means east. He doesn't live in Israel. He lives in, some people think Jordan, and some Saudi Arabia, but he somehow believes in the Jewish monotheistic God, even though he's not Jewish. And he is, in fact, God's favorite person. He's super rich, which back in those days meant not stocks and bonds, but cattle, camels, oxen. I guess cattle and oxen are the same, but well, at any rate, I think he had some bunch of donkeys too, and sheep. That's right, he had sheep. He was doing very well, and he praised God all the time, which in a kind of a positive feedback loop. The more he praised God, the more God helped him out. And he was, of course, respected everywhere because he had wealth. If he were living now, he could have bought all the politicians in Congress. And he had 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters, as well as all these herds and servants and anything you could want. Well, the God presented in Job is nothing like the God that appears elsewhere in the Bible. First of all, he has a bunch of underlings. They're his sons. Later translations call them angels, but in the earlier translations, which I think probably is correct, they're the sons of God. I don't know what the daughters did, but the sons are responsible for looking around as to what happens in the rest of the universe. This is not an omniscient God. And they get together on a regular basis and report what's happening to God. And Satan is the prince of earth. We all know that. He's one of God's sons, and he shows up, and God is bragging about Job, how great he is. And Satan says, well, that's because you're treating him well. How about if we take all his worldly goods away and see how faithful he is then? And God thinks about it and says, okay, just don't hurt him. So we next have a comic scene in the book. It's tragic, but it's also comic, because Job's sitting around enjoying life one day, and his servants show up all in a line, and they interrupt each other. They got such exciting news to tell. Thieves have fallen on his herds and taken all his oxen and taken all his camels, and killed everybody except the messenger. The next messenger comes up and says that his sheep all caught fire, and there's a lot of roast mutton, but nothing much left after that. And then the third servant comes in and says that all his children were having a light lunch when a tornado came along and swept them all away. So he has no children anymore. And Job's response is, well, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, which I will have to say is not something I would have said under the circumstances. But he didn't stop praising God just because he had a streak of bad luck. So the next quarterly meeting in heaven, Satan says, well, you know, it just means he doesn't care much for worldly goods. But what if we really hurt him? And God says, well, okay, but don't kill him. And so now Job gets some real troubles. He gets boils. They're terrible boils, and he sits around with a piece of broken pottery scraping the sores. I itch just thinking about it. And he has night terrors, which I had one once, and I don't want to have another one again. It's not a nightmare, but it's you wake up in the middle of the night and something's horribly wrong and you don't know what. Well, he gets those every night. He even complains that he's got bad breath. And now that he's sick and looks disfigured, nobody pays him any mind. Everybody used to hang on every word he said, and now nobody listens to him. He doesn't know what to make of this. He doesn't know why God is doing this to him. He doesn't know it's really Satan doing it. And he never learns in the whole book that it's really Satan and not God who's causing all his troubles. Now, the servants lined up as they were certainly sent by Satan. And the other messengers from Satan are Job's friends, and they show up. And that's the longest part of the book, and I won't bore you with the details, but every one of them is trying to figure out what sins Job committed that would cause God to punish him like this. Now, an ideal of human justice is that if you commit a sin, you're going to be punished. And it's supposed to be 100% perfect. Well, we know how that works out. But the idea is that the human, I think, as below, so above, some theologians said. The idea was that God is doing the same thing. If you sin, you're going to be punished. That book makes very clear that this parallel is a false one. Again, as I said, bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. And the concept of justice doesn't work out in real life. There's people in prison who did not commit any crimes. There's people who commit crimes and don't go to prison. So our human system doesn't work well. And God's, according to this book, is just as messed up. Now, all those people telling Job, well, think harder, you must have committed a sin, that's got to be Satan talking. If Satan is not only the prince of the earth, but the god of demoralization, and I can't imagine anything more demoralizing than to sit around wondering what sins you've committed that causes things to go so badly. But over and over again, Job says, God, why are you doing this to me? So God shows up in another tornado, only this one doesn't destroy anything. It's just a vehicle for God to speak to Job and his friends. And he doesn't admit that he made a bet with the devil, but he does say, nya, 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 nya. He said, you don't know anything about this because you weren't there. And I love the King James Version because it may not be accurate, but it is poetic. Here's what God says. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid the cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Now, there was no answer to that. Job accepted that the ways of God are mysterious, but it's a lesson that not everybody has learned. I subscribe to some scientific magazines, and almost every issue there's somebody with a new observation of the creation of the universe and a new theory about how it happened. There's the Big Bang and the Big Ploop and the Little Bang and all these other things. They change about every 50 years, which means that for scientists too, they weren't around at the beginning and they don't know anything about what happened. It doesn't calm down their chutzpah any, but it's a lesson that I think maybe we should all keep in mind, particularly if we judge that somebody else committed a sin and therefore was being punished. Now, the ending of Job was tacked on by, I think, by somebody whose descendants grew up to add on happy endings to 1940s movies because God gives Job all his cattle and camels and oxen back and sheep. Not only that, gives him a new set of 7 sons and 3 daughters to raise. Now, I don't know about you, but my experience is that my children are not replaceable. And I don't know why Job's children were replaceable, you know. Oh, any 10 will do. But Job then lived happily ever after and left behind, even though we're given the workings, which we're told the workings of God and heaven and his sons and all the things that cause the world to be the way it is, it still doesn't make any sense. God, in the later books of the Bible, has changed a lot. He's become omniscient and doesn't need all these representatives anymore. He's become omnipotent and can do anything he wants to. But the whole statement that you weren't there, so you don't know, still resonates with me. And the way I feel about Job is that it's a mystery rather than a puzzle. Now, the difference is that a puzzle has a solution, but a mystery might not. Well, thank you.